Hi there, my name is Nina Boski, and I'm one of the producers of Marilyn Behind the Icon. Today, we kick off Marilyn's season, which happens to be June 1st, which would have been Marilyn's 96th birthday. And so, as we kick off her birthday celebration today and the entire special investigation series, today we're going to celebrate who she was. And so we're asking the question, who is Marilyn Monroe? And when I thought about who I could ask, who knows her really well and has such a love for Marilyn, the person that came to mind was such a generous and supportive human being as it relates to Marilyn. He has such a love for her, and he's always willing to help. He is the president and founding member of the longest Marilyn Monroe fan club of Marilyn Remembered, Mr. Greg Schreiner. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you today, very much.
Well, you and I have talked a lot over the past probably decade at this point because we've known each other quite a long time now. And when I was really thinking about who can I interview to really answer that question, you were the first person that came to mind.
Well, thank you. I never met her, as you know, but I feel like I've gotten to really know her through all of the many guests that we've had over the years at the meetings who knew her. I regret I didn't get to meet her in person, but I was a little boy when she died, so and I was back in Illinois, so it wouldn't have happened. But it's amazing how I feel like her presence is really a part of my life anyway, partly because my home is full of things she owned, but beyond that, just all the people that we've been able to interview over the years.
So, in answering this question today, and in some ways it's a complex question, and I know even in my own efforts of trying to figure out who is Marilyn Monroe myself, I've come to find that you can't put her in a box. So, how would you describe Marilyn?
Wow, that's the really big question, isn't it? She's such a multifaceted woman, which I think is part of her appeal, that she had so many dimensions to her personality and so many interesting things about her life. But what I'm taken away with, first off, is that everybody that I've ever met absolutely adored her. They loved her. They fell in love with her in a sense, and were still profoundly affected by her death many decades after her death. So she obviously had something special going on inside of her that really affected people, and I think it was a genuineness about her, a realness about her, and a personality that was so appealing. Everybody just they were drawn to her because she was such an interesting, loving person. She really was generous. I remember that Evelyn Moriarty was her stand-in for some of her last movies, and she would say that if anyone mentioned anything about loving something Marilyn was wearing, the next day it would be at their door in a package. You know, Marilyn would just give it to them then. That's the kind of generous spirit she had, and I think that off the bat is appealing. And then couple that with a magnetic personality and stunning looks, and all the talent that she exuded on the screen, and that's a package that's hard to duplicate, and lots of people have tried, and no one has come close to duplicating that.
Not even close. I mean, if you think about it, I sometimes have young interns working with me, and I'll mention old Hollywood stars because I'm in love with old Hollywood, and I'll say something like, do you know Tony Curtis? And they'll go, huh? Oh, you know Clark Gable? No. You know Marilyn Monroe? Yes. You can be 6 or 96. Everybody knows Marilyn.
I know. I love that about it, that she has survived beyond any other star I think that's ever been in Hollywood, and it's exciting for me that is happening, and we're actually hoping in the next year or two to have an entire exhibit on Marilyn at the new Motion Picture Academy Museum.
Wow.
Honor her, because I think it's long overdue. The Academy never honored her during her lifetime, so it's time they did. And I think it would be a huge exhibit, one that would be very, very appealing to everyone.
Well, you really, when you think about it, in terms of even auctioning off some of her stuff today, have it on exhibit. I mean, it's such a draw, and so many people, from Mariah Carey to you to so many people have collected Marilyn over the years. You don't hear that a lot about some of the other stars that have gone, and unless you're a true old Hollywood fan, you may not know some of these old Hollywood favorites. What drew you to Marilyn? You were a little boy when she passed, so what drew you to her?
Well, I remember my initial, this is the memory I have in my brain, is that my parents took me to a drive-in theater, if you remember those, back then, believe it or not, in Monroe, Wisconsin.
Wow.
I know, how ironic is that? And the movie was Some Like It Hot. No, yes, the movie was Some Like It Hot. And I was transfixed when she came on the screen. I just couldn't believe how beautiful she was. And even as a small boy, I knew that she was special, and no one looked like her where I lived. And I just was fascinated. And there wasn't a lot to find out about her then, because there weren't any books really on her at that point. Mainly magazine articles. I tried to get whatever I could, or pictures. And then as I got older, I started collecting more, and a few books came out on her. And I kept going and going, to finally moving to Los Angeles, where, of course, suddenly I had the whole world at my fingertips as far as people who knew her, and the club brought in so many people, and suddenly she was like my whole life in a way. She's always has been, but really a major part of my life. Thank God.
And who knew back in 1982, when you first started Marilyn Remembered, that she would even have this kind of longevity, and actually in some ways just as much, if not more popular today, because there's now more and more people that know about her. What made you say, you know what, I'm going to start this fan club?
Well, I think what did it is I thought about her and how special she was, and realized that there was no fan club for her at that point. And no one had done a memorial service for her ever. And I thought, well, it's time we did some of these things. So the club was founded initially just to do a memorial service for her every year. But beyond that, we realized we were having too much fun getting together and sharing our love of Marilyn. So we thought, let's do a monthly meeting, which we have done since 1982, up until recently, of course, with COVID. So it's just been a remarkable journey, and I blame it on Marilyn magic.
Yeah.
So much came to me that I didn't even have to seek out. People that knew her started finding out and coming, and it was an amazing thing to happen.
Well, it's so true, Greg, because, for me, I was kind of, I fell into it, so to speak. It wasn't that I fell in love with Marilyn. I love Some Like It Hot. It was always been and still will be my favorite comedy of all time, right?
Yeah.
When I was a little girl, you were talking about Monroe, Illinois, my best friend in first grade, one of my best friends, Lorna, and I dressed up for Halloween. She's a blonde, so she was Marilyn Monroe. I was Natalie Wood. Fast forward, I'm going, so there's little bits and pieces of her kind of hanging around and not realizing it. Then I meet you in this, kind of search for Marilyn. And here's the thing, once she comes into your kind of vibration or energy field, that magnetic personality that was here on Earth, you feel it. She then pops up everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. You're hooked once it happens. Yeah.
I always say sometimes, I know more about her than I know about some of my most closest people in my life, and I've never been that way about any other celebrity. So she's just I find her very fascinating, multidimensional, and I love the fact that you can't put her in a box.
Not at all. I mean, witness, I have many hundreds of books on her written by various people. I don't know of any celebrity that has that kind of backing with books that she does. And of course, they're all different takes, and most of them aren't worth reading, but you get so many different angles on Marilyn with each book, and it's just amazing that that much could be written about someone who only lived 36 years. How can you do that? But somehow she has really endeared herself to so many people.
Well, one of the things we're wanting to do with the podcast and Behind the Icon is to really be able to shed light on the remarkableness of who she was, and the fact that in her 36 years, she probably lived more than some people live into 96 years old. I mean, she had that ability. And if you think about her roots of where she came from, oh my gosh, there's such a wonderful story of resilience and perseverance and the ability to envision a future and be so fragmented at the same time. And I find that really fascinating. I want to ask you, though, I want to go back a little bit about her reading, because I think most people, not the true Marilyn fans that know a lot about her, but for the average Joe, they a lot of times perceive her as that character Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And yet, so that character is the ditzy blonde, dumb blonde, etc. Now, she was far from it. So tell us why, and tell us a little bit about what she read and how smart she was.
Well, Marilyn's education ended before she graduated from high school. So she did not have a formal education, but her mind was always actively seeking out the very best to read. And she would read the most amazing philosopher books, and not fiction, but really heavy-duty stuff. And she even took a course at UCLA in art history.
Wow.
So she was really interested in making herself as intelligent as she could. She really wanted to not be a dumb blonde at all. Unfortunately, the studios put her in a lot of movies like that because that's what sold, and she sort of had to take on that image, but it was not her at all. That's the last thing she was dumb. She was a very smart lady indeed. And,
yeah,
yeah.
She certainly was, and she can converse with some of the smartest minds in the world.
Yeah,
too.
witness the people that adored her. Carl Sandburg was just totally enamored of her, as was Dame Edith Sitwell, another incredibly legendary scholar of that era. And that wouldn't have happened if she didn't have the kind of brain that they would have been attracted to. She held her own.
Yeah, she really did. And also, a lot of times people don't understand this too. You can't say, start calling the shots, start standing up to studio heads, creating your own production company, etc., with Milton Green, and not have a little bit up there, especially during that time. What would you like to say in terms of that? Because I think she was actually pretty smart in terms of how she crafted her career.
Yeah, I think she always had a focus of where she was heading, and unfortunately she had to fight the studios to get there, because they were only going to see her as a certain kind of image because it was making them money, which I understand. They want to, when you get a good thing going, you don't want to change it and hope and keep it. You want to keep it the way it was because it works. But she really wanted more in her life. That's why she studied so much. That's why she went to study with some of the great acting coaches along the way, because she wanted to improve herself constantly. And I think that she was still, at the time of her death, working on getting herself into a better career. That was her last film under contract. And then I suspect she would have been more independent and chosen probably vehicles that would have shown her off in a way that she wanted to be shown off. Even her last picture, she wasn't a dumb blonde anymore. Something's got to give. She, even though it was a frothy kind of comedy, at least it wasn't the dumb blonde image.
No, she was a mother, and this is something that we all know that she craved to become. Do you believe that if she had a choice at 36, the 20-year-old might be different than the 36-year-old, But if she had the choice between becoming a mom at that point in her life or being the huge movie star, what do you think she'd choose?
I think she'd want both. uh,
Hey, have it all, right?
yeah, I don't. That's a hard decision. I couldn't answer that because I don't
Yeah,
know. But I mean, she absolutely really wanted to be a mom, but she also really wanted to have a career. She really enjoyed the movie star status and working that way. Um, I would not know for sure, but
yeah,
she enjoyed them both, and it's a shame that she was not able to to have the ability to be a mother. She tried certainly and had several miscarriages,
yeah.
but was never able to have a baby.
Yeah, that I certainly, particularly towards the end of her life and the end of her marriage, I think that was a very hard time for her as well. What do you say to people that say, because I get this a lot from people, they'll say something like, "Oh, it was just such a tragedy. It's such a tragedy. She's so tragic." What would you say to that as a response?
Well, certainly there's the tragic element of her life, but if you look at her overall 36 years, it's a triumph that she came from a very humble background of basically an orphanage and no training in acting or singing or dancing or any of that, and made herself into literally the most important movie star of all time. That's a triumph in every respect. And she took what she had and made 190% of what she had into something really spectacular, and had the ability to really know what to do with her life. She made mistakes. We all make mistakes along the way, and probably some of her choices for friends were not the best choices, but she also had a lot of great friends along the way too. And no, I think most of her life was pretty wonderful. I'm not sure she was able to appreciate how wonderful it was sometimes, as we all are. I think we don't understand how much we're loved and how much we are cared for and how successful we have really been. And I bet it's
Yeah,
hard being at the top of the heap like she was. Um, that's a hard life.
it is a hard life because, I even say more so now because of all the social media and the invasion of everything. But even back then, it was a mob
Oh,
wherever
everywhere
she.
she went, I mean, she was just inundated with people, and that's got to be a little difficult after a while to never be able to go anywhere without being mobbed. Um, it makes you, yeah, less likely to be able to go out in the world and just enjoy yourself.
Yeah, very much so. One of the things though that I would like to ask you, because it's something that I do believe about her, I think she was a deep soul. And what I mean by that is sometimes in the tabloids and stuff, they make up stuff that she wrote things that it just doesn't even sound like her writing, right? When you look at her poems and some of the things that she's written. What would you say to that? Do you agree, disagree? What is your feeling? I feel like she was a seeker, not just of knowledge, but kind of meaning behind things. Do you see that at all?
Absolutely. I think she herself was always trying to really go to the depths of as far as she could. And I think that's one reason so many people were attracted to her, because they saw in her so much more than just the superficial that we see in the films. There was this great depth to her personality and to her soul. Uh, Very wonderful soul there. And yeah, I would totally agree with that.
I think also back in that time, and I think people need to understand, she wasn't just a wallflower that just slept around. As people say, oh, she slept her way to the top. No, she didn't. She actually really worked hard at her craft. And some of the areas with these studio heads, she would stand up to them as well. And I thought, wow, that's not the dingy dumb blonde. That's somebody that says, hey, you know what? I deserve here, and you're not going to treat me this way. Where do you think she got that strength? Because I'm looking at her background, and that's a really difficult place to be. How would you answer that question in terms of there might not even be one answer to answer it, but what are your feelings on that?
Well, I think that she was instilled early in life with a good sense of morality, and that may have come a lot from the Bolander family, which she stayed with as a child, uh, about being a good person.
Mhm.
Um, because I think that sort of stayed with her whole life, that she wanted to be a good person, and whether that not necessarily a Christian or Jewish or whatever, but just that to have that good morality, that you are a good person, you don't hurt other people, you're because she loved to help people, and she loved animals, and she loved
Mhm.
the nature and the world. It was so many things that she always working for, and the charities that she wanted to be a part of. That's somebody that's got a good heart and a good soul inside of them. And I think part of that may have come again from her time with the Bolanders, who were fairly religious people, but not overly strict in the sense of being domineering. They just introduced that to them.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's that's certainly part of it as well. And then her ability, like you said, about animals, but civil rights, talking about issues that I could imagine back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s probably were never talked about. It's father knows best, and keep everything squeaky clean. And she's
Right, right.
expressing stuff that
Absolutely.
nobody was talking
She
about.
went out of her way to, I mean, I remember visiting orphanages in other cities and embracing these black children that were at the
Mhm.
orphanage, which was unheard of. You just didn't do that. And she made sure that racial equality and so many other things were a part of her life, that she didn't do it by hitting people over the head. She just did it.
He
And
just did it. You're so right. There's a episode that we have called Soul Sisters that deals with the Hotel Dell, and the production manager that came through and said that the hotel is not going to let your assistant maid come with you, which is African American or Negro as they called it at the time, right? And she said basically, she comes, I come. She doesn't come, I don't come. And I thought, wow, that's a really powerful thing. And she didn't do it in a mean way. She just basically said, look, there's no reason why she can't. And so, you think about Some Like It Hot, that at the time, with Billy Wilder, that was a pretty groundbreaking movie because you're talking about, really stretching the boundaries of that time period. And yet, in the hotel itself at that time, Black people were not allowed in the hotel. And I think, wow, the fact that she said, no, I'm gonna, Ida Mae has to come with me, and I think, people don't see that strength, because I certainly look at that resilience. I always look at people that are successful in their life, and I look at where they came from. And I go, well, if you started here and you just moved here, and you might have had everything given to you, and that's great. You're successful in society standards. However, if you started with all this challenge and the fact that you moved way over here, I mean, that is just mind boggling sometimes, how people can pivot themselves to this new reality and yet also be trapped by it too, because the very thing that she created was the very thing that she wanted to kind of move away from as she got older and not have to be typecast in that dumb blonde role.
now that's one of the many reasons we love her.
Yeah. So, over the years, because you started back in 1982, there were a lot of people still alive. And unfortunately, as time goes on, each passing year, somebody that actually knew her is gone. So in the early days, though, there was many people that still were alive that knew her. What are some of the things that you heard over the years firsthand from these people that kind of describe who is Marilyn Monroe?
Well, I think of her husband, Jim Daugherty, who we had as a guest, and he just only knew Norma Jean, really. But
Mhm.
even as Norma Jean, he adored her. And though the marriage did not work out for many reasons, uh, he had nothing but wonderful things to say about her, and how naive she was when she was younger. There was an innocence there, but already that same quality about love for everyone was there. And he told me one time that when it was raining outside, was a pasture outside the house, and she brought the cow in the house to get it out of the rain.
The cow in the house. Oh my gosh, I've
Cow in the
never heard
house.
that.
He came home to find a cow in his living room. Thought, okay, that's Marilyn, you know.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great story, Greg. That is hysterical. That would be something I would do too. It's like we got to get
Yeah,
the cow
and
out of the rain.
well, she didn't know. I mean, she was a young kid at that time. She was not 16 when she married him. So
Yeah.
she's, yeah, a little naive that way. And he mentioned about her cooking, but she didn't really know how to cook, but she liked colorful things. So she would make a lot of peas and carrots because they look so pretty on the plate. I mean,
Oh.
just things like little things like that are I think, charming. Then there were people like BB Goddard who grew up with her a little bit, and all the fun adventures that they had together. They said that there was a drive-in movie theater near them when they were living in the valley, and they couldn't afford to go to it, but they would go up to the wall, and there was like a knothole in the wall, and they would take turns looking through it to watch the movie. I mean, things like that to me just say, this is a real Marilyn. This is a real person that's having a wonderful life, and she's doing great girl things that you want her to do as a young girl.
Oh yeah. I just those are fun tidbits about her, because I think sometimes we have to live vicariously through the people that actually did know her as well. And even though you didn't get a chance to meet her live, being with her all these years and having such a love and a warmth in your heart, Greg, of Marilyn. And that's one of the things that always stands out for me. I mean, what honoring in you to honor her legacy as you have all these years as we move into the 60th. I cannot believe the 60th anniversary of her death. And look at, we're still talking about her as if she's still here. And maybe she is in this conversation. Who knows?
Very possible.
having that kind of presence still here on earth, even though physically not here.
Well, I remember Susan Strasberg told me that when she died, her spirit started spinning outward, and it just keeps going further and further every year, encompassing the entire world.
That is so true. She is a worldwide phenomenon, and yet I think too, like you, I think you can say, "Oh, I'm attracted to her because she was a glamorous movie star." I can talk to her because she's so beautiful. I love her in her movies. She's a great actress. But I think and all of those contribute to who Marilyn Monroe is. But I think the reason why 60 years later she's still with us in our hearts is because right now, I think more than ever here on earth, we are needing our hearts more than our head. And that connection that I think people can always relate to is, I just want to love and to be loved. And when you are wanting that self-acceptance in yourself and wanting that, I think she alluded that honesty and authentic expression, that childlike quality, but also that deep soul, which is the contradiction of who she is, like all of us that are human. And that's one of the things that I think that really stands out for me. What for you, if you were to say to me, and this is a hard question, by the way, I know it's going to be a hard question for you, but if you were to describe who Marilyn Monroe is in 3 words, what would you say?
Loving, beautiful spirit.
I would say both here on earth and in the other plane, wherever that is. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I hope she's looking down from heaven and going, I so appreciate everything that's being done for me on this planet still. Because I don't know that she did appreciate it when she was here, because I don't know that she was aware of how very special she really, really was. And maybe she does now.
And still 60 years later, look at the effect that she still has. And you know, as we always close out a lot of our interviews, is as we say, hold a good thought for Marilyn, but definitely hold a good thought for yourself. So thank you, Greg Schreiner, for being with us today.
I had a ball. Thank you.